candidates. Will you recommend the Job Guide 360 interview guide to prospective job seekers?
Sure, I will. The guide is detailed and very
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're pulling apart one of the most complex and honestly critical job functions in modern business, the Data Privacy Analyst, the DPA.
Yeah, this role has just exploded in importance, hasn't it? They're really the linchpin for any company handling sensitive info.
Definitely.
They're not just, ticking boxes. They are the guardians of customer trust, of proprietary data.
Right.
And they operate right at that tricky intersection of technology, law, and increasingly ethics.
It's a really interesting position, isn't it? They're not purely IT, not purely legal. They're kind of interpreters, making sure every system, everything from product development right through to marketing, is handling data the right way. And they're doing this while navigating, what our sources are calling a regulatory minefield.
Exactly right. It's not just about knowing one big law like GDPR.
Right.
It's figuring out how those GDPR principles for, say, Europeans interact with CCPA for Californians, and then maybe you layer on something super specific like HIPAA if you're dealing with ELF data. The real challenge, honestly, is that cross-jurisdictional puzzle. The DPA has to somehow stitch together all these often competing requirements into one functional framework to the business.
The pressure must be huge. So, our mission for this deep dive is clear. We're unpacking that unique mix, the analytical thinking, the reg knowledge, and, crucially, the communication skills.
Yeah, the soft skills.
Exactly. And focusing on how you actually figure out if someone truly has these skills for real-world situations. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with their core mandate. What are they actually doing day to day?
Right. So when you look at the DPA's sort of operational checklist, it's pretty long. They're conducting regular privacy assessments, developing and maintaining the company's internal policies to ensure they're compliant.
Okay.
Constantly monitoring what people are actually doing inside the company to spot, where things might be drifting from the policy. And critically, they're the first responders for any privacy incident.
That sounds less like just compliance and, more like a strategic risk management role.
It absolutely is.
Our analysis really stressed that the best DPAs have to be proactive. They need that strategic view to anticipate privacy risks before they happen.
Before they blow up.
Right. They're not just reacting to breaches. They're building privacy by design right into the foundations of the business.
And that strategic element, that's everything. It means when you're evaluating candidates, you have to go way beyond just, testing their knowledge of regulations.
Okay.
You need someone who can actually influence people, who can communicate effectively across departments, talk to engineers, talk to marketing, talk to the C-suite. If they can't get that buy-in, that perfect policy they wrote, it's just going to sit on a shelf, basically, gathering digital dust.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Based on the effectiveness reports we looked at, the consensus seems incredibly strong. Behavioral questions work much, much better than hypothetical ones for DPAs.
And this is, I think, the absolute core takeaway for anyone hiring for this role. A hypothetical question. What would you do if X happened? It only really shows if a candidate knows the textbook answer.
Right, the theory.
Exactly. But a good behavioral question, starting with something like, tell me about a time when, that reveals how they've actually handled pressure in a real situation.
Okay.
It gives you solid evidence of their process, their problem-solving chops, their proven ability. If you want to predict future performance, look at past performance. It's the best indicator we have.
So if we're going for that depth, it means quality over quantity in the interview itself.
Yes, definitely.
The guidance seems to be for a typical, say, 45 to 60-minute interview, you need to resist that temptation to just barrel through a long list of questions. Better to focus on maybe 3, possibly 4 key behavioral questions and explore them thoroughly, really dig into the answers.
And, we should probably address a common worry here. What happens if you have a really strong candidate, but they don't have that specific data privacy analyst title on their resume?
Good point, yeah.
Our sources were quite clear on this. Look for transferable experience. Think about people coming from, say, cybersecurity, broader compliance or audit roles, maybe legal or even data governance.
Okay.
In those situations, you shift your focus. You concentrate on their grasp of the fundamental privacy principles and, critically, their proven ability to learn and adapt to new frameworks quickly. That adaptability is key.
Right. Let's pivot then. Let's dive into some of those specific scenarios. The kinds of questions designed to really show you what a candidate can do operationally, maybe under pressure or on a big project.
Okay, the first one, and you could argue it's the most crucial, is around risk identification and remediation. The question needs to be direct. Something like, tell me about a time you spotted a privacy risk or maybe a compliance gap that the organization hadn't seen yet.
Ah, okay. So this forces them to walk you through their actual process.
Exactly.
And when you're listening to that story, you're listening for a few specific things. First, how did they figure out how serious it was? The potential impact. Second, how did they document it? How did they communicate it up the chain or across to the right stakeholders? And then the really critical bit, how did they juggle the strict privacy rules with what the business actually needed to achieve when they came up with a solution?
That balance point is just critical. The DPA can't just be the Department of No.
Right.
If the business wants a new feature and it needs a lot of sensitive user data, the DPA's job isn't just to block it. It's to assess the risk, understand the goal, and then try to find a creative, compliant alternative.
Like maybe anonymizing the data.
Exactly. Or using aggregated data, or maybe implementing stronger controls, something that lets the business move forward, but without taking on unacceptable risk. You're listening for that problem-solving skill, not just gatekeeping.
That's a really helpful distinction. Okay, second strategic scenario, communication and influence. How well do they translate complexity?
Yeah, this is huge.
So you ask them something like, describe a time you had to explain really complex privacy rules or requirements to stakeholders who weren't technical or weren't lawyers, the people who actually have to implement the changes.
This is where you find out if they can actually bridge that knowledge gap. You want to hear how they simplified things. Did they tailor their message? Did they talk differently to engineers versus, say, the marketing team?
Did they use visuals, analogies?
Exactly. Anything to make these abstract legal or technical ideas concrete and understandable. And crucially, how do they deal with pushback? Because they will get pushback from people who think privacy is just slowing things down.
And if we link that idea of translation back to implementation, the DPA isn't just briefing people, are they?
No. Yeah.
They're vital for making sure the technical controls are actually put in place correctly and maintained properly by teams like IT or security.
Right. If that translation fails, the controls fail, and the whole organization is exposed. Simple as that.
Okay, moving on. Let's cover the proactive side. Process leadership. We need to talk about the privacy impact assessment, the PIA.
Ah, yes, the PIA.
Yeah.
Foundational stuff.
So ask the candidate to walk you through conducting a PIA for, say, a new product launch or a new service, maybe a major change in how data is processed.
Okay.
What should you be listening for there?
Here, you're listening for two main things: methodology and collaboration. How did they actually gather the information they needed about data flows, data types, classification?
Right.
And then how did they work with all the other teams involved? Legal, IT, the product team. And the most important part, how did their assessment actually influence the final design or the implementation plan?
So did it lead to real changes?
Precisely. This is where privacy by design becomes real or just stays a buzzword. Did their work actually change how the product was built or how the process was rolled out? That's the proof.
Got it. Now let's flip to the reactive side, the situation nobody wants but everyone needs to prepare for, data breach management.
The crisis moment.
Yeah. So the question focuses on how they responded to a data breach or some kind of privacy incident. You need to hear how they handle that intense pressure.
This is where their process absolutely has to be locked down. In their answer, you need to hear a clear, almost step-by-step approach, like an emergency drill.
Okay.
How do they immediately figure out the scope, the impact? What were the critical first steps to contain the breach, isolating systems, for example? How did they coordinate, often simultaneously, with legal and maybe PR?
And the notification piece.
Huge. Their understanding of those critical regulatory notification requirements, deciding if you need to notify, who you need to notify, regulators, customers, and when that is absolutely paramount. The stakes here are massive, reputationally and financially. They need to project calm, controlled authority.
It seems like all these scenarios we've talked about, identifying risk, translating complexity, doing PIAs, managing breaches, they all circle back to that one core strategic challenge you mentioned earlier, balancing business objectives with privacy requirements.
It really is the tightrope they walk every single day. A DPA's highest value isn't just knowing the laws off by heart. It's their ability to analyze the privacy implications of what the business wants to do, communicate the constraints clearly, and then develop creative, workable, compliant solutions that let the business initiative move forward safely. And crucially, getting everyone on board with that final approach, even when it's difficult. That skill, that ability to gain buy-in, That's what separates a truly excellent DPA from one who's just, adequate.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for someone trying to hire the right person, or even just trying to understand this incredibly complex role?
Well, I think
It seems the complexity really demands people who are masters of process and strategy, not just rule memorizers.
absolutely. And that leads to our final evaluation insight, which really doubles down on that flexibility point. If you're looking at candidates with experience in different regulatory landscapes, maybe one knows GDPR inside out, another is an expert on, say, Brazilian law. Don't get too hung up on who knows which specific statute best. Focus instead on their process and their approach.
How they think.
Exactly. How they think, how they analyze problems, how they collaborate. Strong DPAs show this underlying ability to dissect any new requirement, adapt quickly, and figure out how to implement the right controls where the specific legal framework is. It's the skill set that's transferable and valuable, not just the knowledge of one particular rule book they used last year.
It really is that adaptability that defines success here, isn't it? In such a fast-moving field. So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. If a DPA's job involves constantly staying current with changing regulations and maintaining this detailed map of all the company's data, what data types, where it flows, how long it's kept.
Yeah, the data inventory.
Right. How could organizations maybe leverage that data mapping more effectively? Not just see it as a compliance chore, but use it as, well, a foundational blueprint for future business strategy, for product design, for innovation, thinking beyond just ticking the compliance box.
That's actually a fascinating thought. Turning a